Okay, so I wanted to do a quick, probably will not be quick, little video to hold you over until we can have our formal lesson together. I'm not sure if maybe you never got my email response or just something came up today. No big deal. But we can get together next week. You let me know when is a good time, and I'll say all this again in the actual message. So I just kind of wanted to recap a couple of things that are to me very important. The first one is how to motivate Teddy, how to reward him, and then we'll kind of branch off into ways to get him to be successful when he's not feeling motivated. Our marker system that I've talked about before, we have good, we have okay, we also have no and which are kind of the same thing. Good and okay are going to be our reward markers. So the markers are something that announces either the presence of food or more so now that he did something that we like. So it's marking an exact moment in time. You certainly don't have to feed him for every little thing. We've really weaned that off. I want it to be, if you really like something, he gets a reinforcement for that to motivate him to do better. So good is going to be our duration marker. So when I ask him to go into a behavior, I will use the word good to show that that's what I liked. And then I will repeat the word good throughout him remaining in behavior. So if something new comes about and he's successful in staying in that behavior, if I have him in there for a while, just to kind of a reminder that I like what he's doing. When I say the word good, he does not, I want him to stay in behavior. So if you're gonna offer him a reinforcement, it's you coming to him so that he stays in that behavior. And then we want him to remain in that behavior until we give the release word, which is okay, and that's hi, and that is the terminal marker, meaning he can come out of behavior. So if you're saying the word okay, that means if you have food, he can come to you to get it, or that is, he can just come out of behavior. He doesn't have to do anything, it just means that he's no longer expected to remain in that behavior. And then no and again, they mean the same thing, it's just more so whatever your preference is. I go back and forth just so dogs understand it. That is going to be more of an infraction marker, meaning if I put him into a behavior and he comes out of it, I'll say no to help fix it, or if he does not go into a behavior on command, then I will say no, and then ask him to go again into behavior. So it is important that we only give the command one time. So it's not sit, 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 Teddy, sit, sit, sit. It's one time, and if he does not successfully go into behavior, then we're gonna say no, and then help him be successful. So that is kind of where the pressure comes in. So when applying pressure, really it's gonna be leash pressure, spatial pressure, e-collar pressure. That's gonna be, for a leash, it's gonna be tension in the leash, whether it's you created or he is creating it. The tension comes off when he is showing the behavior that we want. So if he's dragging forward and I say no, when he stops pulling into the leash and gives, that's when I embellish the release of the pressure and mark with the good. I want to make sure that he's doing the behavior that I like before I release the pressure. Wherever you release the pressure is the behavior that's reinforced. So if he's dragging and he's dragging you to go outside, when you get to the door, if that's where the pressure comes off, you have rewarded him pulling you to that door. Spatial pressure is more so using your, I always struggle with wording this, using your presence to make him move a little bit. So if he's crowding your space, Teddy, come here. Good boy. If he's crowding your space and you walk into him, good. As soon as he gives into your front, your space, your spatial pressure, you stop moving forward, you relieve the pressure. There's no actual physical contact. We're not like kicking him or walking in and making him move that way. It's just asking for space. I think, especially with these younger guys, it's very important to advocate for your space, especially in the beginning. Teddy, good boy. you want to make it a point, if he's being rude and pushy and jumpy, you want to make it a point that you go above and beyond to advocate for your space. So if you say out and he just stares at you, or he's jumping on you and you're like, no, Teddy, get down, then you're going to go all the way to make him successfully give you space. Make it a big deal in the beginning to kind of set that behavioral expectation, so that way you don't have to need to go to that in the future, because it's already known, like, my space is important, it's to be respected. And I think that's something that a lot of puppies get away with when they're little, because it's not really that big of a deal when they're like climbing on you, being cute and cuddly and pawing at you and jumping up on you. But as they get bigger, like Teddy, he's not a huge dog, but he's very like solid. When he comes and slams into you, that's very rude and dangerous. So we want to make it known, like, when you come to crowd my space, I'm going to make you move away. And again, we're not physically pushing him away, we're just making yourself very confident and standing upright, out, making him move away from you. And then e-collar pressure, I'm going to send a separate video on the e-collar that kind of goes over the mechanics of it. What it's going to be is, when he's wearing it, it's going to be applying the stem until you have the behavior you want, and then as soon as he does it, release the stem, mark with the good. I don't remember how much I go into that video of levels and things like that. Whatever level works in that situation is the level that you want to use. So I usually start at a lower level, 4 or 5, and I will work my way up until I have the behavior that I want. You should not be able to necessarily tell that Teddy feels it other than he's doing what you ask. So there should be no like yelping or like clinching or anything like that. With the exception of emergencies, if he's running towards traffic or a dangerous situation, I don't care what this does to him if it stops him from going into something where he could get really hurt or you know, killed or whatever. Sorry, not to be grim. So I don't want you to be too focused on one number. If you, in here, he's listening to 4 or 5 because there's nothing competing with his attention to me, that's great that that level works. When we go outside and there's other things to sniff on the ground, there's people walking by, there's dogs walking by, a 4 or 5 might not work because there's more things competing for his attention and more motivating than listening to me, so you might have to go up a little bit. Don't be afraid to move up until you get the reaction that you want, which is him responding to the behavior that you're asking for. So if it's 10 or 15 or 20, I don't think I've gone that high with him. But if he needs to, that's fine, up until he starts flinching and things like that. Use your best judgment. If it's a situation where it's not that huge of a deal, you want to kind of hover at a lower level that he's maybe struggling with to help him be successful. And then if it's something where you really need him to follow through, just follow through with the level that you need to get him to be successful. And I always like to caveat with all of the pressures, be mindful of how much you're applying, because remember the rule is we want to continue that pressure until we have the behavior that you want. So if you're applying too much pressure and Teddy begins to kind of panic or get really stressed out, you then come to a crossroads of you continue to apply the pressure because you're holding out until you get the behavior that you want, and then it kind of taints the behavior or it kind of tarnishes your relationship a little bit, makes him stressed out, and then you have this like stressed out little doggy, or you prematurely relieve the pressure and he can learn that you've enforced the wrong behavior, and he can learn that if he throws a little bit of a tantrum, then he gets what he wants. And I've had a couple of dogs that have experienced that in their life, and if I even just, I'm not exaggerating, if I touched the leash, they would scream and gain a roll. And I know 100% without a doubt that I was not hurting the owners. Nobody was hurting the dog when they touched the leash, and the dog would scream and gain a roll to get out of doing whatever it is that the handler wanted them to do. So it's embarrassing, you don't want to hurt your dog, and whatever. Just be mindful of the pressure. So you don't want to go too high for a situation that doesn't warrant that type of pressure. So I encourage you to play around with the e-collar, making sure that you're aware of the levels, how it changes. Also being mindful that the levels that seem one way to you might not seem the same way to Teddy. Everyone has different pain thresholds. So I've had people come in here and they feel it at a 3, and then I've had people come and not feel it until a 20. Same exact, it means always the same thing, but it might feel different to different people, dogs, whatever. Just to recap just real quick, the buttons over here are going to be the ones that correspond to the number on the screen. So the black one, I need to get closer, and it's backwards, so I apologize. The black one directly corresponds to the number. So it's on a 5 right now, and it's on him, so I'm not gonna use it. If I tap the 5, it's going to send out a level 5. This button increases whatever level you're on by 5 degrees. So if it's on a 5 and I hit this, it's going to send out a level 10. And then as soon as you let go, it'll go back down to a 5. I will make sure that your e-collar is on the continuous function. So that means that as long as you're holding these down, they're sending out a stem, they're sending out that pressure until you let go. And then the black button on it's by itself, that makes the collar vibrate. Usually what I use that for is to interrupt him hyper-focusing on something. So if he's sniffing and I need him to leave it, or not sniffing, but if he's like messing with something that maybe he's not supposed to have, focusing on something ahead that I don't want him to get worked up about, I usually tap the vibrate and it kind of makes him go like that. All it does is vibrate the collar, nothing else. These two are what they're the stem. They make like similar to a muscle stimulant, so they will just contract the muscles. When he's wearing this, you want it to be fairly tight. You want to make sure that the 2 contact points are flush to his neck, making consistent contact. So it should be something that you can fit 2 fingers under the strap snugly. The box should be able to, if you lift it up, you can move it around, but it should not move around on its own. If it's just resting on the fur, then of course it's not making contact with the neck and it means nothing. So if you ever notice any sores forming, it just probably means that they're pressure sores. Maybe just start moving the collar around a little bit to different areas. Some dogs have really sensitive skin. It does not transmit heat or anything like that. There's no burn marks. It is not an electric shock. So if he can wear it in water, it's not gonna electrocute anything because it's not that. The little flappy things right here, the charger port, these are both waterproof. They both have the charger ports. They're both waterproof as long as those flaps are down, and this collar has a 1/2 mile radius, although of course I do not recommend Teddy being a 1/2 mile away. And when you're getting used to this, I recommend using it while he's on a leash and pairing it with the leash and this, so that way you get comfortable with this before you're like, hey, let's go off leash, and then you kind of panic if anything goes wrong. So definitely lots of practice with this. I recommend for the e-collar for him to wear it fairly regularly. If you are home with him, he should have it on. If you leave the house, take it off. At night, take it off, unless you're working on something at night, like he's working through the night or something like that. But that way you always have the ability, as long as you have this with you, it comes with a little lanyard so you can carry it around. You always have the ability to communicate with him regardless of where he is around you. So if he's across the room and he's doing something, you need him to come to you. Let's say he's barking out the window, nope, Teddy, come. You usually always have the ability to say, no, you have to come to me. As opposed to it not being on, and then you have to go physically involve yourself with whatever that's happening, and then there's chances for missed opportunities, and then you're like, well, now I'm going to put the collar on, and all of a sudden he's an angel because he's become collar wise and knows he only has to listen with it on. So if it's always on, you always have the ability to communicate with him. My personal dogs, they always have theirs on. I have 2. My Pitty, he's kind of grown up without the e-collar very much, and he is a little turd and doesn't listen to anything, and I really have to always use my e-collar to be successful. Very frustrating. It's just his genetics and breed. But I like the freedom that I can have with him that I would not even sort of be able to have without the e-collar, because we live on a farm and there's animals and people ride their little bikes by, things like that he's all triggered about. Whereas my Shepherd, she always wears hers on and I never need it. She listens to everything that I say, but if there's an off chance that she is distracted or more motivated by something else, I can get her to listen to me. And that is why she always is successful, is because I've always made it to where I'm successful. And we want to balance use of this with positive stuff too. So we want to make sure that we're offering motivation. We're not giving things out for free. Affection, food, freedom, those things should be earned. So you want to balance them a little bit. I like to use the dog's meals for training. They are given affection only after they've been doing things for me, and their freedom is earned. And I mean freedom around the house. So like I'll use a lot of place commands and things like that, like making him sit and wait to go through doors, putting him on his place while we're doing things around the house or while we're eating dinner or watching movies. Much more structure and rules in the beginning with less freedom and love and food and free food and things like that. And then you kind of even out the scales as they gain trust and they earn those rights. So things that I'm going to talk about now, they're going to seem like a lot right now, and they should be, because you're setting up new rules. They're going to seem like a lot right now, and they're going to, over time, feel more natural, and you can wean off the need for those things. The more you enforce things now, the better relationship you'll have. Just because Teddy listens to me a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that he'll listen to you the same way. My relationship with him is different. When he got here, I immediately started out with a certain list of expectations that he had to follow. So he started out on a certain path with me, whereas when he goes home with you guys, he's with you significantly more, and he's already had a history of reinforced behaviors that you guys have to mold over. So it's natural that transferring all of this training to home is a little bit trickier because you have all of those things that are already set in place. So don't be frustrated. Everything that he does with me here should be implemented gradually at home. You kind of take a step back, just because I've never been to your house with him. We've gone to several different places. We went to, where did we go? We went to Short Pump Dog Park and walked up and down there. We've gone to the little like neighborhood thing down here, Home Depot. But obviously I've never been to your house, so he has to learn how to do those things at your house too. So don't be frustrated if he's a little confused and has to figure those out. So again, going back to behaviors, commands, when you give the command, be clear, direct. We're not yelling at him, we're not screaming at him, we're not asking. It's just very straightforward, do this for me. I don't like to throw in a lot of words. I want it to be, this is the command, this is the marker, this is the correction. And I don't want to repeat a bunch of stuff, because then that makes those sounds white noise for him. If you're always like, good boy, good boy, good boy, no, like you're always fussing at him, then he just learns to kind of, man, I don't care about those things. We want the things that we say to him when giving him direction. Of course, you can talk to him all you want to. When giving him direction, we want it to be, this is what I'm asking you, this is what I don't want you to do, etc., etc. Command one time, pressure if he needs help fixing something. You'll get a packet of stuff. There's a sheet on there in prong collars. I didn't use a prong collar on him, but I left it in there because it goes over direction that we want the slip lead or his leash to go into, to kind of help him get into the behavior that you're asking for. So generally what it is you're applying pressure in the direction that you want his head to go in. So for instance, when you're asking him to sit, his head kind of comes up, so he would pull up. And when I say pressure, I mean just a guidance or a pop of the leash. We're not choking him out, we're not cranking on him or anything like that. It's just a guidance. If you want him to go into a down, then you would pressure downwards. If he's pulling ahead on his leash, you're going to just pressure back. So if he's pulling ahead, you're going to pressure back until you have him back by your side. For the healing, I usually go up and back instead of just back, because I find that there gets a little bit of opposition reflex if you're just pulling backwards. So kind of up and back kind of makes him move a little bit like that.